Hello. Let's talk a little bit about influence. What is influence? Because I discovered that too many people, they dislike and even resent this concept of influence. They feel it like something it's bad smelling, something bad. And I got curious because for me, the way I see it, influence, it's a natural part of life. It's a natural process of life that you cannot stop. As a matter of fact, we influence and we are influenced all the time. And disliking or resenting a continuous process, which is part of life, now that's an interesting way of living, sort of speaking. So I got curious and I asked those persons, what is it? Why do you resent? Why do you dislike this concept of influence? What's happening inside of you? And some of those persons were open enough and willing to dig into a deep conversation and to question their assumptions and to be true about what they discovered down there. And we got to the conclusion that actually their understanding of influence, it's actually forcing somebody to do something that they don't like. So forcing them to do something that I like them to do against their will. But my question is this really influence? Is this really influence or it's something else? Perhaps we're using the word influence to describe a process which is not influence. Think about that for a moment, because the word influence, the concept of influence, comes from the Latin influere, which means basically being in the flow. Influere, in the flow. And how can that be in the flow when I am forcing somebody to do something they don't want? How can you call that in flow? How can they be in flow when they are forced to do something they don't really want? How can that be in the flow? It's not. So using the word influence for such a process, for such an activity, it's improper from my perspective. That's forcing, for the lack of a better word. That's forcing, not influence, in this sense. So I'm suggesting to you to contemplate this process of influence, as I said at the beginning, as being a natural part of life, just like planting a seed. When you plant a seed in the ground, and there is a tree coming up out of that, or it's not a tree coming out of that, because you know that you have no control. All that you can do is to plant the seed, but it's not for you to control if a tree will going to grow from that seed or how that tree will going to look like if the tree will grow. So those things are out of your control. So you're keeping yourself aside, apart from the frustration of even trying it. Basically, your job is to do the doing, to plant the seed, and then to allow the nature, the universe, if you wish, the wisdom of the universe to do whatever that wisdom sees fit to happen for that seed. Because that seed will going to turn into a tree, because that's the intelligence in the seed, if the wisdom will consider that would not impede, will not interfere with the natural order of things, with the harmony in the world. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. And this is basically the old saying from the Book of the Way: do without doing. That's the way of life. To do without doing, without attachment to the results of your actions, without trying to control what's going to happen. Your job is just to do the things, to be the tool in the hands of gods, if you wish, as in karma yoga. But it is not you that you are the one who needs to make those things happen. Those results are not yours, so you don't need to be involved emotionally in those things. So, in this sense, you may start to contemplate influence as basically having an impact on your environment, on the people around you, having an impact. That's it, having an impact. It's not for you to control what's going to happen. And how, for instance, how can you, out of this perspective of planting a seed, how can you have an impact on others, for instance, on other people? Well, simply just plant a seed. Tell them how would you like them to behave. Suggest what would you like them to say to you or to say to others, or to how to behave in certain context, on top of the alternatives that they already have, and without trying to force that thing into happening. Because when you force things into happening, when you force people do something they don't really want, basically, you impede with the natural order of things. You impede with the flow of life, with the Tao, if you wish. And that's pretty much like when you cut a forest, or when you detour the course of a river. You may expect some secondary effects to lash back. And the same happens when you try to force a particular thing in other people. And the same happens when other people try to force those things onto you. Isn't that true? So in this respect, if influence is having an impact, then deliberate influence would mean plant the seeds of the things that you want to grow into your life. And then, again, allow the nature to do whatever the nature considers best to do with those seeds. But your job is to plant them. And if you want to, again, to be deliberate about your influence, plant the seeds that you want, not randomly throwing seeds around, in this sense. Yes, the other day I watched a kid playing with a ball. And she wanted to push this ball through two sticks, which were over there. So she started to, she picked up the ball and she threw the ball towards that direction. And of course, it didn't go from the first shot. But she went to the place where the ball fell, wherever that was, and picked up the ball and threw it again, and do it again and again, until eventually the ball went through those sticks over there. But there was no sign of grudge in her attitude. It was no sign of attachment, of neediness. It was just the joy of throwing the ball in the air. And that was a fantastic feeling, because that got me to remember that ever since last December, I had this idea to put together a workshop. But then, what do I see? I got caught in my thinking. What if this happens? What if the other thing happens? Or what if that doesn't happen? And so on and so forth. So I was trying to control things. And I didn't see that all this time, January, February. I couldn't see that actually I was trying to control things. I was attached to a particular outcome. And that's exactly why I didn't even start it. Isn't this what's actually happening in our lives? So in other words, I caught myself not doing exactly what I'm teaching. I was out of integrity in respect with this particular aspect of my life. And I had this revelation, this insight. Do create the workshop for the sake of creating the workshop, for the sake of throwing the ball up in the air, not being concerned with what's going to happen, with how it's going to go, if people will like you or not, or whatever. Your job, my job as a human being, it is just to throw the ball in the air, to put the things in motion, to make things moving in this respect, without forcing them to end up in a particular point, because that will be forcing, there will be attempting to interfere with the natural order of things in this respect. And this is going to get me out of harmony of my life. So in this sense, I decided just to create it. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to even call it a workshop. I'm going to call it a play shop, because it's not about work. It is actually exactly about this attitude of playfulness, of enjoying the doing for its own sake. Just like a singer, an artist, when she sings on the stage, she sings for herself, for the sake of singing it, of singing that song, without being overly concerned about if the public would like her, or if the money is enough on the cashier and so forth. In that moment, she is lost in the doing, and that's actually the doing without doing. And this is the state that I would like to inspire for you. I would like you to to have an experience, a full experience of it. So you can have a reference experience on your own. So when your life are going to bring up to you a new start, then you'll be able to do it, to pick up on this state and just do that start without letting yourself concerned and, stuck in just waiting for things to, to show you a sign or something like that, just because you're not sure about the end result. Don't concern about that. Just start doing the best that you can, and then just playfully go along with whatever happens. Whatever the balls falls, just pick it up from there and do it again. So this is basically the message of this long video. It is about 10 minutes now. It is a little bit longer than I intended, but I believe that this concept of influence, it is so important, and too many people are just shying away from that. So my message for you is this: how many things can you get started on your own life? How many things have you put aside for so long just because you weren't sure, because you fell over this compulsion to control the end result, and because you couldn't know exactly what would be the end result, you stopped doing it altogether. So if you were to adopt and to really, really have an experience of this state of playfulness, of doing, a state of I am and I can, and just do it for the sake of doing it, how many things can you get started? And then whatever happens, get everything else, get the new throwing of the ball as a new start. So starting over and over again until you get to the result that you want, while still remaining in harmony with the natural order of things. And when you do it that way, when you do the doing that way, basically that's a place of authenticity, because you're not succumbing to the ego's need to control things. So when you do that doing, you can honestly say that you are authentic in that moment, because you're not caught up in the need to control how it unfolds for you. You're just enjoying the fact that you are doing it. And that's basically what gives you power to start it again next time, and again and again and again. Because nothing happens from the first shot, really. Nothing happens for the first shot, from the first shot. If it just came to mind in the Bible, it is said even God it took him 7 days to make the world. So it wasn't like, well, I didn't make it in 1 day, then I should give up. Not at all. You just get a new start every moment. So this is basically what I wanted to suggest to you, and to invite you to my play shop and get into this state of I am and I can, of putting things into motion, throwing the ball in the air, being perfectly okay with whatever happens, with whatever the ball happens to fall, and then pick it up from there and throw it up again towards the thing that you want to have happen in your life. So again, start deliberately influencing. All the best. Take good care.